The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, good morning everybody. Can anyone hear me out there? If someone wouldn't mind just typing yes so I can be sure, that would be great. Great, thanks for that. So we're still expecting a few more people to register, so I might just give it a couple more minutes before I start the presentation. And I'll get back to you. So in the meantime, I'll just introduce myself. My name is Heather. I've been working here at Contours for about 6 or 7 years now. I was lucky enough to go to Antarctica myself in November last year, which was absolutely phenomenal, as you can imagine. Contours is a Melbourne-based company. We're fairly small. We've been operating for about 40 years. Ted, who's the owner and the manager, has been in charge of the business ever since, and he has been to every corner of South America, as you can imagine. We specialise in South and Central America, the Caribbean, and obviously Antarctica. So that's everything from Mexico all the way down to Tierra del Fuego, and everything in between. We have small group tours to South America that are around 27 days. They have 16 people maximum, and then we also do tailored itineraries for FITs as well. So I guess we'll just start. So Antarctica. Easiest way to get there is from Ushuaia in Argentina. Ushuaia is, oh, hang on a minute. There we go. The southernmost city in the world. So it is all the way down the bottom tip of Argentina, as you can see on the map just here. About a 3.5-hour flight from Buenos Aires. There are several direct flights per day with either aerolíneas or LAN airlines. There's also a direct flight from El Calafate, just down here in Patagonia as well. So a couple of easy ways to get in and out of Ushuaia. While you're in Ushuaia, there are a couple of nice things to see and do. There's the Tierra del Fuego National Park, which is just to the west of Ushuaia. Probably the most famous thing in the national park is the End of the World train, which is a must for train enthusiasts. It's a really nice day trip. It only takes about half a day to get out there, and you see really typical kind of fauna and flora of the region. And yeah, it's a nice little prelude to heading out onto the Drake Passage and getting down to Antarctica. A lot of people get very overwhelmed by Antarctica because, of course, there are a million different options in terms of ships and itineraries and lengths of tours. I kind of break it down by thinking there are really 3 main types of itineraries. The first is obviously the Antarctic Peninsula, which is most people's focus, I guess. Those cruises are typically about 10 to 12 days, though there are shorter options now that you can do a fly-in and cruise back or vice versa. So the fly cruises tend to be around sort of 7 or 8 days long, which is certainly the shortest way of getting to Antarctica. The second option is the Antarctic Circle options. That is a huge bucket list item for a lot of people, is to cross the Antarctic Circle. So those cruises are focused on the Antarctic Peninsula, but they also head down a little bit further with the aim of crossing the Antarctic Circle. It's pretty important to let passengers know that it's not always possible to do that on the cruises for whatever reasons, due to weather or things like that. But definitely all the ships do their absolute best to make that dream come true for passengers. The third type of cruise itinerary is one that encompasses Falklands and South Georgia. Obviously these are going to be much longer in length, so they're about 18 to 21 days, with landings at Falklands, also at South Georgia, weather permitting, and then down to the Antarctic Peninsula. South Georgia is probably one of the best wildlife regions in the entire world. The photography opportunities there are absolutely magnificent. That's where you see the king penguins, the elephant seals, and all the wildlife that a lot of people really associate with Antarctica. So, one really important thing to remember about Antarctica is that as part of the Antarctic Treaty, only 100 people can actually be on shore at any one landing site at any given time. So that's why it's really important to choose a small ship. If you've got a ship with 150 or 180 passengers, that means that passengers have to be rotated through the landing excursions. And obviously that just means less time on land at the end of the day. Most ships will aim to do 2 landings per day, so you'll have breakfast, then you go out at about 9 a.m. for the first landing. Typically around 3 to 4 hours per excursion, though obviously if passengers are cold or tired or whatever, they can head back to the ship early. But yeah, for people who want to be on land, you generally have about 6 to 8 hours on shore per day. One of our favourite companies is One Ocean. They've got 2 ships. There's the Akademik Sergei Vavilov and the Akademik Yofi, 92 and 96 passengers respectively. This is a Canadian-based company. They have an excellent, this is the company that I went with actually, so they've got a really amazing crew. I could not fault the knowledge and service on board. It was absolutely amazing. Probably about 150 years of experience all up between the crew on the ship that I went on. So you've got bird, you know, what do you call this? Bird naturalists, or whatever they call it. Historians. We had mountaineers, people who formerly worked for the rescue teams in the Canadian Rockies and so on. So a really interesting wealth of experience and knowledge there as well. The Vavilov does the fly cruise options for One Ocean, so they typically fly from Punta Arenas into or back from Falkland Islands and then carry on cruising from there. This company and many others also offers a bunch of different optional excursions as part of the tours that you have to sign up for prior. So they have kayaking, snowshoeing on a lot of the trips, skiing on a couple. So definitely for more adventurous passengers, there's some really interesting options there as well. The optional excursions do cost extra, and certainly for some of them like skiing and even the kayaking actually, you really need to have prior experience for obvious reasons. The Polar Pioneer is another really great little ship, only 54 passengers, so it really is quite small, this one. This is owned by Aurora, the Australian-based company, and they also have started doing the fly cruise options, taking passengers all the way down to King George Island and then starting sailing from there. So that cuts out a huge amount of sailing over the Drake Passage, which is definitely a big selling point for a lot of passengers. The Ushuaia is another really great option. They're very cost effective, only 88 passengers on board, which is a really great size, and they do a lot of the, they tend to stick to more of the Antarctic Peninsula type excursions. I don't know if these guys go out to Falklands and South Georgia, but this is another really good option, particularly for passengers who are perhaps on a bit more of a budget. The Yofi, so this is the sister ship to the Vavilov. This one does pure sailing itineraries, so no fly cruise on this particular vessel. And as you can see, they take you right out to Port Stanley and the Falklands before coming around South Georgia and then down through the South Shetland Islands. So this is a longer itinerary, 19, 20, 21, sometimes 22 days, just depending on the time of year and how much ice and so on there is out around. A couple of things to remember as well in terms of the season. So the earlier in the season, or November, coming into early December, is when you've got a huge amount of snow and ice, massive icebergs, really pristine snow as well. Later in the season, the penguin poo starts to get a little bit overwhelming, to be honest. So the smell increases a lot, and also the snow just has that kind of dirty, more slushy look to it. So depending on what the passenger's main interest is, people who really want kind of the, the ice and snow effect of Antarctica, I would definitely recommend early in the season. Passengers who want to see perhaps penguin chicks or things like that, then that's better off in January or even to February. So it really just sort of depends on whether or not passengers have a particular passion or interest, and then we can pick a cruise that works for that. Another important wildlife area in Argentina, and also that has a lot of the wildlife that you might see in Antarctica, is Puerto Madryn and the Valdez Peninsula up here. So this is obviously much more accessible than Antarctica, much cheaper to get to. So perhaps if you really have wildlife enthusiasts who can't make it to Antarctica on this particular trip, but would still like to see some amazing wildlife, then Valdez Peninsula is definitely worth a look. Direct flights from Ushuaia and Buenos Aires, so it can also be incorporated nicely into an itinerary that includes Antarctica. And on the Valdez Peninsula, you've got seals, definitely whales. It's an amazing area for whale watching in
September.
In September, sorry. And they've also got really impressive underwater viewing vessels and things like that as well. So it's quite an amazing, probably the best area in the world for whale watching actually. So the question for today is how many people are allowed on shore in Antarctica at any particular time. In order to go into the draw to win a slot on the Familiar, you need to email Lourdes at the email address on the screen there, answer the question, and you have the opportunity to travel to Ecuador next year with us. That pretty much wraps up the slides, but obviously we've got plenty of time now for some questions. So if anyone has anything they'd like to ask, type it up for me and I can try and answer those as best I can. Nobody? All right, great. Well, no worries, guys. Thanks very much for joining me this morning. That was quite a short one. I'm not very good at timing myself, obviously. But yeah, if you do have any more questions or if you think of anything, you know, in the meantime, please feel free to email us either at the email address that I've just given you or Contours at Contours Travel. If you've got any passengers who wish to travel to Antarctica or if you've got any questions like that, please let us know. There are often really great early bird specials, so most of the companies will release discounts of $500 to $1,000 US per person discount for early bird bookings. And One Ocean have actually got an amazing last minute booking for this year, which is $3,000 US dollars per person off the price of their cruises for 3 departures later this year. So if you've got anyone who you think might be interested, it is probably the best possible discount imaginable for early season departures this year. What's the question there? Is there a time when the seas are less rough? Unfortunately, not really. The Drake Passage can be absolutely ferocious, and it can also be the Drake Lake. So obviously the captains are amongst the most experienced sailors in the world. The crew tends to be Russian, and that's across pretty much all the companies because of their experience in sailing in polar waters. The ship that I went on was actually held back in Ushuaia for 12 hours because the captain was not 100% sure about whether or not it was going to be safe to cross the passage at that time. The ships are built for stability, so particularly those two Russian vessels, the Vavilov and the Yoffi, they were used for research previously, so they've got amazing stabilising systems. We had 6-metre swells going over, and I have to be honest, it was nowhere near as bad as I thought it was going to be. On the way back, we had pretty much the Drake Lake, so it's pretty hard to predict, but nothing a bit of seasick medication won't do for you, I guess. Any other questions? Okay, no worries. Well, thanks again for joining us, and yeah, sign up for the next one if you're interested. Cheers, bye.